Sherjan?
Yeah, let's start. Let's go for it.
Okay. All right. So I'll start. Do you mind letting me share screen?
Sure. Let me see
Yeah.
if I can. I'll make you a admin. I think that's.
Sure.
Let's see.
If that doesn't work, you can also like click the arrow right next to share screen and then allow simultaneous sharing, I think.
Oh, there you go. Boom. Look at that.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can still see my screen, right? I changed to present view. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. So this is Mentor Hour with Sherjan. So before we go into the Mentor Hour, I know, well, we don't know a couple of you, so we'll give a brief introduction to SSA. So SSA is the Singapore Student Association, and we're basically a social and cultural club. So in the past, we've held events for our own members and also have held collaborations with clubs like the Malaysian Student Association or the Chinese Student Association. So these are a couple photos and a little collage of our events in the past, I'd say past year or so.
Nice.
So yeah, we have some hiking events to the Grand Canyon, since we're only 3 hours away.
Nice.
And some hot pot events and mahjong game night.
Yeah.
So some of these celebrations are culturally important, very important to us as Singaporeans, but some of them are just to like have fun with friends and even members outside of the club that aren't Singaporean, like
Yeah.
basketball night or the camping trip. Yeah. So we'll give a quick introduction to ourselves. Bunyal, would you like to start?
Hi, my name is Bunyal. I'm the SA president. So currently I'm majoring in computer science, and this year I'm a junior. Currently I'm doing my studies in Singapore. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Bunyal. So I'm Brandon, vice president. I'm a mechanical engineering major, and I'm a junior this year as well. I'm actually in Philadelphia. Since everything's online, I'm staying with my sister.
Nice.
And some of my hobbies are going outside, like whether it's camping, hiking, playing basketball,
Yeah.
and yeah.
How do you guys get to Grand Canyon as a student? Is it like, are there buses or Uber?
So Uber would be way too expensive. So we would either do car rentals, or if we have friends that want to come along that have cars, obviously we highly encourage that.
Nice.
And we'll just split the gas as an incentive for them. And
Got it,
obviously
got it.
going to Grand Canyon itself, like a lot of people would want to go. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Arman. I'm the treasurer for SSA. I'm a junior studying Earth and space exploration. And I think I'm one of the few people here in Arizona braving out the heat. But
Right.
I know recently it's been kind of cloudy, so hopefully it rains soon.
All right. Thanks, Arman. And this is a brief introduction to Sherjan. I'm sure he will have his own more elaborate introduction, but this is the background. He's held positions as a vice president in investment banking at Morgan Stanley, an associate at Capital G, which is the investment arm of Google. And he had a bachelor's in aerospace engineering from University of Toronto, and master's in financial engineering from UCLA. So this is basically just a very brief background. I'm sure he'll have a deeper explanation. Okay.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, Sure, John, you can take over.
Okay, cool. So guys, we have
sharing.
almost everybody. Let me just switch to this. Okay, so Moses, welcome. I think you're the last one to join. If everybody can switch on their camera but keep their microphone mute, that'll be helpful. Later on, we'll open it up, so and it just makes it more entertaining and interactive, I guess. So today, what I want to do is, first of all, thank you so much to the team for allowing me to speak. I'm excited. I have part of me is that, I've had a little bit of experience in Singapore myself. Last 5 years, I lived in Hong Kong, so Singapore was only a few hours away. And then I would actually, especially like summer of 2018 and summer of 2019, I mostly spent in Singapore, living there in various Airbnbs because I was trying to launch my startup there. But no, Singapore, first time I ever went to Singapore was 2013. and I got my ass handed to me by the weather. And since then, I've become a big believer in shorts in Singapore, no pants allowed. So I definitely know the region. And a lot of my students, the second workshop that we ever hosted in Asia was in Singapore, and Singapore became a chapter for me. So I understand totally, like, you're kind of like the background students that come from there, super competitive. You guys are obviously, excited to go into finance and business and those kind of industries. And coming from Singapore, I think it's one of the better places to be from overall, because there's just so much opportunity, even in Singapore. And the talent from Singapore is highly respected across the world. So what I want to do today is I'll give you guys a little bit of my background so that you guys understand why I do this and why it could be helpful to you. Predominantly, when I've been coaching and teaching students, it's mostly with my story and motivating students based on that. And the idea there is, like, there's a lot of things that I've done right, but there's more things that I've done wrong, and you guys can learn from those lessons and hopefully apply it to your own journey. And because we have a small group, I think it makes it easy so we can make it interactive, and you guys can always type questions in the bottom. So just in the Q&A, and you can ask me privately as well, as you can like chat directly with me, and I can then answer that if you don't want to ask everybody. So today I'll talk about my story real quickly. I'll give you my background, then I'll speak specifically about international students' job applications. As an international student, how can you make your job application for whatever industry? Could be banking, could be consulting, could be tech. How can you make it strong? And how can you kind of compete with some of your competition that's at Arizona or across the United States or even in Singapore? Then we'll talk about most crucial components of job applications and just what does it take to get the job. Now, obviously, I have a much larger course on that goes much more in detail, but I'll kind of touch on the high level so you guys kind of understand that. Then finally, we'll talk about common mistakes someone makes in their early part of their career. A lot of you that I can tell are like juniors or sophomores or even freshmen maybe. So it's helpful for you to kind of understand. And I'm saying that from experience, from aspect of like, look, I've been through your shoes and after, and I think like a lot of young people can get blindsided by some things, or just get these blinders on for what they think they should do, but they shouldn't actually. So anyways, that's going to be the agenda of the call, of the webinar. And then at the end, we'll open up to Q&A, and we can make it super interactive, and we can go back and forth. Cool? Everybody's with me? Thumbs up? Everybody's thumbs up? Good. All right, we got the team good to go. All right, so my quick background, guys. So just like you guys, I was an international student myself. Originally, ethnically, I'm from Pakistan. So I was born in Pakistan, immigrated to Canada in 2000, and then I studied engineering as not an international student, but as a local Canadian in Toronto. I sucked at aerospace engineering, wasn't something that I was passionate about, and was more interested in the side of business and the world of business. And in business, investment banking is one of the better avenues to choose. So based on that, I couldn't get into investment banking after undergrad because my GPA was low. I was coming from non-target background. A lot of the investment banking jobs come from some of the top schools get them, and you have to have a high GPA, and you need to kind of study finance or some sort of finance or business to get in. So I didn't have any of those prerequisites. So I said, why don't I go do a second degree? So I went to UCLA as an international student and studied master's at the business school with the whole goal that, hey, I'll do this 1-year master's and hopefully get into investment banking. So I did that at UCLA all throughout the year. All I did was network, meet everybody and anybody who I can meet under the sun, who doesn't matter if they were at investment banking in New York City or they were investment banking in Singapore or Tokyo, right? So a lot of the alumni I would reach out to would be all over the world, right? Who have gone to UCLA and have broken into some sort of investment bank. And I didn't care if they were in Tokyo or Singapore or New York or Chicago. But the point for me was, if I can reach out to them and say, hey, look, I'm interested, maybe one of them would be willing to help me. So point is, as you guys are international students, I've been in your shoes before, and I understand, some of the hurdles and kind of the headwinds you face. And a big part of it that I'll cover in a bit is it'll be made easier if you network, far and wide, not just focus on, just your local geography at Arizona or in the US. So that networking led me to, getting some interviews, but I didn't get all the interviews that I wanted. It was just some boutique firms that were some small name companies in LA that were, willing to hire me. And a lot of the jobs that I got at that time when I was in school doing business school were unpaid internships. So it wasn't like the big dream jobs of Goldman Sachs of the world or McKinsey's of the world. So that's when I did something that is, I think, relevant to you guys. I went back to Toronto for a week. So while I was at UCLA for a year, I took 1 week off, went back to Toronto, And the reason I went back to Toronto was I knew that my brand coming from UCLA would be higher, compared to the competition in Toronto, right? So as you're an international student, a lot of times you want to work in New York. I get that, right? But unfortunately, your brand is not the strongest in New York, because in New York, you're competing with everybody from Harvard, Columbia, NYU, MIT, all these other places. But if you go back to Singapore, for example, for some of you, then your brand is automatically higher than anybody who's at NUS, SMU, NTU, right? So just look at the competition you're competing with. And the whole goal is like, no, you're not just, gonna sign a job offer there and just, be stuck there. The whole goal is to just like get a ticket to the ballpark. So what I mean by that is, when I went back to Toronto for a week, I got interviews from 4 or 5 different banks in Canada, who are the best banks in Canada, because they thought of my candidacy as better and more competitive than my competition that was locally there. So that led me to getting my first offer, which was at a medium sized bank called Bank of Montreal. And that offer, I didn't accept it. I took the offer in terms of received it. And then I went to LA again, and I said, hey guys, look, I have this offer. Give me at least an interview. That offer helped me get the interview with Houlihan Lokey, which is one of the elite boutique firms in investment banking in LA. So basically took that offer, converted to a full-time offer in LA. Then I started working at Houlihan Lokey, and that began my journey, or started my journey of working in US investment banking, right? So taking that, then I, kept on networking. I didn't stop. Just because, you get an offer or you got a job in the industry, you should always be trying to improve yourself. So I kept on trying, and I got, interviews at Morgan Stanley while I was at Houlihan Lokey. And Morgan Stanley's top investment banking group is the group on the West Coast called Tech Investment Banking in Menlo Park. So through networking, again, through UCLA alumni, I got an interview at the Morgan Stanley Menlo Park office. And that interview led to me, signing a full-time offer with Morgan Stanley. So long story short, if you look at it, yes, you get an offer in an international offer or a small bank, you convert that to a medium-sized bank, then you convert it to a bigger bank. And that same can be applied to any sector, any industry, any geography, right? It's all about, slowly moving up the food chain. So then I worked at Morgan Stanley for 2 years as an analyst in investment banking. Then after that, I wanted to work in tech and in venture. So I joined Google. Google was starting their investment arm called Capital G, which makes investments in startups, in late stage startups. So I joined that, and that led me to a lot of trips to Asia, because Google was trying to invest in Asia. So I looked at a lot of deals and companies in China, India, Singapore, Taiwan, that whole belt. Then I stayed there for 2 years. Then Morgan Stanley asked me to come rejoin them again, and I rejoined Morgan Stanley in 2015, and it was a Hong Kong opportunity in investment banking. So I rejoined as an associate, and then I got promoted to VP, vice president. So that's been kind of like my career journey for those of you who kind of want to understand like how I did all that. In 2017, I left investment banking, I left the world of corporate, because I wanted to do something I was super passionate about, which has been entrepreneurship for a long time. And I started a software company which was related to HR, recruiting, and helping people in the services sector get jobs. So it was a software app. The best way to describe it, it was like a Snapchat, but for jobs. So we built that. We ran that for 2 years. It wasn't successful. We couldn't get product market fit. Then it was in Hong Kong, Singapore, and also we tried to launch New York. Long story short, we had to close that business down last year. But this business, this coaching business, has been around for 10 years now. This has been always running for me in parallel to my career. And this is something that I'm, naturally and personally just passionate about. So this started back in 2010, and fast forward, now it's 2020. So I'm actually approaching my 10-year anniversary in November. I've taught about 20,000 students, more than that now, just coaching and, helping them train for their career, for their life journey and things like that. So anyway, so that's kind of like my life story, so that you guys kind of have an understanding of the background of it. So what I want to do now is I want to take this topic and go into international students and how you guys can strengthen your applications and as you compete for jobs in the US. So the first part I want to mention to you is a concept called pushing the platform, right? So when you think about your current university, you have the first thing a university does, as you imagine, is provides education, right? So the first thing that helps you compete with people around you is your GPA. A lot of the times when a recruiter looks at your resume, the first thing they look at is your GPA. And seeing the GPA, the issue with it is like, not everybody is a 4.0, right? But the reason why people have low GPAs is for a lot of different reasons. You might be in the wrong program, you might be taking super complex, tough courses that you don't really need to, because ultimately the recruiter is not going to care if you studied, advanced calculus or just regular math, right? So if you are in a situation like that where your GPA is low and it's low because of the wrong reasons, because you're proving to your parents that you can take tough courses or something like that, I would recommend against it, because a low GPA can be a big barrier. So the first thing I want you to do in terms of pushing the platform is whatever the platform you're part of. So for you guys, Arizona State University, try to make sure your GPA is high, right? As high as it can be. And if that means taking easier courses to pad it, do that. Similarly, what pushing the platform also means is, in addition to education, what the university provides, it provides all these other things. For example, this is one good example, student associations. So we have the Singapore Student Association, we have someone from the Vietnamese Student Association, we have someone else who might be from a different student association. There's a ton of student associations on campus that you can join, that you can excel in and take leadership roles in and really get yourself involved, right? Similarly, if there are sports and extracurricular associations, I saw, Brandon, you play basketball. So, get yourself involved in the athletic side of things, maybe start a street league, just do more than just go to school, right? That's the whole idea. And the reason for that is, when someone looks at your resume, let's just talk about just your school competitions, someone who else goes to Arizona State University. If they see two candidates come up, one candidate has a, Arizona State University 4.0 GPA. Okay, the other person has Arizona State University as well, and maybe a 3.7 GPA. Now, if you just pause there, you'd be like, okay, I'll take the guy who's 4.0 GPA. But if you look at the 3.7 GPA, and that person has, president of this association, vice president of that, treasurer of this, started this other organization, that's a much more interesting candidate, right? Because these jobs, as you think about it from an aspect of consulting, banking, accounting, any of these jobs, they're not that hard to do. They're not that complex. But what they require is someone that the person, you work long hours, you work with people that are super interesting. And those, those decisions are not purely based on like, hey, how well can this person, read a book in a library? That's where the GPA comes in. You have to be an all-rounder when you get some of these, really good jobs. So my point on that is push the platform, join as many extracurricular activities as you can, and take leadership roles. And if there isn't an activity that you like, for example, there isn't a club that you like, but you're passionate about something, right? For example, I saw, you guys go to hiking trips and you're, passionate about that. Or for example, you guys are passionate, you might be passionate about food, for example, or you might be passionate about mahjong or some sort of a board game as well. Start a club based on that. Take initiative, take leadership roles like that, so that you can differentiate your resume from the pack, right? From the rest of the group. For me, when I was in undergrad, the way I differentiated myself was I started a photography company, right? So photography studio, basically I had a camera, I bought some lights, and I would go to different universities and high schools and photograph proms, dinner dances, I photographed weddings, right? Because my personal passion was also photography, and that was one of my hobbies. So when someone looked at my resume, they would see that I went to University of Toronto, aerospace engineering, but they'd be more excited to see that, okay, this person actually has a real small business on the side. So this comes to my second point, which is push beyond the platform. So the first point was push the platform, basically use it as much as the resources provided by the campus, by the university. The second is, let's go beyond that platform, see if you can do something on your own outside of the university. So this could mean, in today's world, you can start an online website, you can start a startup, you can start a small shop on Shopify, you can start an Instagram travel channel if you want, right? Or you can start a YouTube channel, just like I did, right? So the point is, there's a lot of ways to build your brand beyond the platform, which is basically taking full initiative and starting something that you're excited about. So, for example, you're excited about, I don't know, I think Boyan, I saw you love riding a bicycle. So maybe let's just say you're competitive on the bicycle side of things and you like riding a bike. You can start a bike club or a riding club in Arizona for the local community. And maybe it grows. Next thing you know, you have 5,000 people that ride every weekend with you, right? Similarly, for example, I saw you guys go to Grand Canyon as a tour. Let's just say that's your personal passion. Find unique opportunities, unique trails that only you know, and you become an expert at it. And then you invite as many people that want to come. And next thing you know, 5,000 people have taken, Brandon's tour of, Grand Canyon, right? So there's all of these things that you can do that are not like given to you. You came up with them yourself, and they don't have to be big. Just start small, start with something that you're passionate about. And that's how you can differentiate. Because when you get to the interview, the person's not going to ask you, hey, tell me about your 4.0 GPA at Arizona. They're going to be asking me, hey, what is this Brandon Tours about, right? Or what is this bike club about? What is this, other thing that you started? What is that about? And that makes you more interesting. And when the time comes to decide which candidate to go for, people will always choose the more interesting candidate than the one who's less. All right, so next point I want to talk about is networking. right? So when you think about, getting into these industries, and like I mentioned in my story, every job that I've gotten has come through networking. Every job, every opportunity, fundraising, investing in companies, any of the stuff that I've done was always through networking and by cold networking, reaching out to people who I think I would have some sort of similarity with, and asking them to help me, asking them to teach me and train me and all that. So starting from UCLA, I found the alumni directory, and I basically reached out to anyone and everyone who I thought could help me, right? So for you guys are at Arizona State University. There's a lot of people that are at ASU who have gone and done great things. You should find out how to get access to your alumni directory and start cold emailing everyone that looks interesting, even remotely interesting to you. And it doesn't have to be only the industries that you're interested about. Let's just say there's someone at ASU who you think has a super cool company or startup, and you're not even interested in startups, but you think he or she's doing something cool. Shoot him a note, right? Start building that network, especially when you're early, and that comes from networking. So reaching out to people, putting your brand in front of them is going to set you apart, because the worst thing you can do is wait for the career center or the job postings to come up and then apply and hope for the best, because then you're competing with everybody. When you do cold emailing and networking, the benefit of that is that you're reaching directly to that person. That person finds it, wow, this person's actually reaching out to me directly. They've done some research, they've looked into me, and that's how you can get an edge, get yourself on their radar. So networking is another thing that I think you should do. And especially if you are, as international students, for example, you are a niche set of people in that larger university. When I was, international student at UCLA, I knew I was Pakistani. Obviously, I'm ethnically Pakistani and or Indian, let's just say. I'm a Canadian. So I use those things to my advantage, right? Like you guys, I'm sure there's other Singaporeans that have come to ASU and done great things, right? Find who they are. That's your job, right? So for me, when I got to UCLA, I started finding who are the Pakistanis or Canadians before me, right? Because if I find them, they'll know exactly the pains I'm going through. They'll know, hey, I have to get visa to get a job here. They'll know that, hey, you want to move here and all that stuff. They'll know the culture that you're coming from. So finding people that have been in your shoes, you will actually get empathy from them, and they'll understand your pain points and will be able to guide you and navigate you. So definitely find out who are the people that were in your shoes before you. And it doesn't matter how old they are. They may be 30 years older than you. No worries. Shoot them an email. The worst thing that can happen is they don't reply to your email. That's okay. That's totally fine. Next up is branding. So branding is important. And what I mean by branding is this, as young students, you don't spend a lot of time thinking about building your brand. And if you think about it from an aspect of a company, so think about, let's just say you're Apple or Microsoft or Google or Morgan Stanley, any of these companies, or Nike is a great example. When you see Nike's brand, you see Nike's brand being consistent across all platforms, right? So if you see Nike's page on Facebook, to Nike's Instagram, to Nike's YouTube, to Nike.com, any place where you can see Nike, it has very similar, consistent branding. That should be your mindset with your own personal brand. So as a personal brand, you obviously have a Facebook page, you may have a Twitter, you definitely have a LinkedIn, you may have Instagram, right? Snapchat, there's a couple of avenues. TikTok could be another one. You may have your own website, right? Make sure that you build a brand across all of those channels consistently. So if someone shows up on your Facebook and then shows up on your YouTube or shows up on your LinkedIn, they don't see different personalities, right? You don't want to show that on Facebook, I'm a big party animal, and then on LinkedIn, I'm a super professional, right? It should be across the board. So take some time and look at your LinkedIn, look at all these channels, all these avenues, because what's going to happen is when you do apply for jobs, the first thing people will do is they'll search you. As you know, if your resume passes the filter test, that's just the first test, and then someone does some due diligence on you and does some research on you, they'll find you on Facebook. They'll find you on LinkedIn, obviously. They'll find you in all those places, and they want to see that you put an effort in making your brand really good, right? Some people choose not to have social media channels. Some people choose not to have Instagram, or they'll block it, or they'll delete Facebook during recruiting season. I think that's a wrong strategy, because if you don't have Facebook or you don't have Instagram, first of all, that's just weird for people to see. Second is they'll just say, maybe this person is just hiding something from me. So I would recommend the other strategy where you use those avenues to showcase all your cool things. Because the other part to think about is, like, in a resume, for example, you can't show in a resume that you're an avid snowboarder, right? You can't show in a resume that you love playing golf or you're amazing at, some sport, right? But if you have an Instagram or you have a Facebook or YouTube, you can showcase those things. So if someone stumbles upon your Facebook or YouTube like that, they'd be like, holy shit, this person's, not only a great resume, but look at all these amazing other things they've done. So branding is an important thing, and think like a company, think like Apple, think like Nike, and see how they, do their branding. So build your brand around that. And you can use my example. I'm still trying to build mine. And if you go to, let's just say, my website or my YouTube or my Instagram or any of these other places, you'll see that I try to have the same colors, same font, same image across every channel. And that's kind of what I try to do. So that could be one example that you guys can look at. Finally, this is the most important part. As international students, look, we're getting into this, avenue, which is, COVID's around, economies, in the shitter, things are just bad, right? And it just makes it worse for international students, right? Compared to like local domestic students. And as international students, you have to go through a lot more hurdles than local students. So one of the things from my story that you heard or learned was you got to find out where your brand is going to, be most competitive, right? So for me, like I said, my brand was most competitive in Toronto, even though I didn't want to work in Toronto, but I knew I could get some offers there. The same way for you guys, your brand is going to be most competitive in your home geography. So it may be Japan, it may be Singapore, it may be China, it may be Hong Kong. So my recommendation is, I'm not saying don't apply for jobs in the US, definitely apply for jobs in the US, but also apply for jobs and opportunities and network in your home turf, right? So if Singapore is your home turf, definitely apply for Singapore Morgan Stanley if you want to do investment banking. If you want to work at Google, definitely apply Singapore Google. The reason for that is they will know that your brand is better than the brand that they're getting from local talent. So your candidacy is going to be weighted higher. And once you get into the process, right, there's a higher chance you'll get an offer there versus getting an offer in San Francisco or New York. Now, when you get that offer, that doesn't mean you have to take it, right? But that offer allows you basically to get that check mark that, hey, this person is valued at the firm. And then you can always ask, be like, hey, I got an offer at Google Singapore. Google, can you please, see if I can get that offer or similar offer or transition that offer to New York or San Francisco or LA office. Now, there's a chance they'll be like, no, the offer is only for Singapore. No worries. At least you have an offer that you can go to, and you can bring that offer back to the US and reach out to other firms. So say Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat and say, hey, look, I have an offer from Google. They're not going to care if it's Google, New York or San Francisco or London. Offer from Google is an offer from Google. So that can move the other employers to be excited about you and be like, okay, this is pretty cool. This person's wanted on the street at a respected brand, regardless of where that brand's geography is. And they may be more inclined to at least giving you an interview or moving you up to the next round and the next round. Now, ultimately, if let's just say you get no other offers and that's your only offer in your home geography, take it, right? Worst case scenario, you work there for 2 years, and then you can always transition, do an intercompany transfer, and move from Google San Francisco, Google Singapore to Google Hong Kong or Google London or some other places. And companies, especially the big brands, they love doing that. They love moving talent into different geographies they can learn. So that's kind of like my 5 points that I wanted to mention, purely based on international students and how as you guys can strengthen your job application. All right, so next thing I want to mention to you guys is the most crucial components of a job application and what you guys should keep in mind. So the way I've thought about it is like there's 5 things that matter in terms of getting a job. If you look at let's just say there's 100% scale, 50% of getting a job is luck. You can't control luck, unfortunately, right? Luck is just what it is. And it can be on your side, it cannot be on your side. So that's something that you can't control. You can do everything right and then just have an unlucky day at the interview, and there's your chance. So let's assume we don't worry about luck for a second. We'll just move that to the side. Let's move on to the other things. So the other 50% of this, the first one is resume, right? You need to have a kick-ass resume. And what I'll do, Brendan, like after this, I'll send you guys an email that you can then send to the students. I have a resume course that you guys can take and upgrade your resume. The reason why I mentioned resume is important. Everybody's got a resume, but I can tell you 99% of resumes I've seen are crap. They're shit. People don't put a lot of effort into it. And what happens is, people don't realize a resume is the most important document in their life. It's a living document. And most importantly, it's a document that represents you, your brand, when you're not there. So if that basically first impression when a recruiter sees your resume and it looks ugly and just doesn't look appealing, it's a very easy no. Just put that in the rejection pile. So focusing on your resume, making sure it looks great, looks beautiful, is super important. So that's one thing that I think is super important. The third one is networking that we've all already covered, because you can have a great resume, you can have a great brand, but if you don't spread or market that brand in front of the right eyeballs, then nobody's going to know you exist. So networking allows you to take that brand and, you know, get it in front of the right people. Then there's behavioral. So when you think about once you get an interview, you'll be tested on two things. You'll be tested on behavioral questions, and then you'll be tested on technical questions. Behavioral is what matters, not technical. Most students, unfortunately, focus too much on technical training. They'll, you know, learn accounting, they'll learn engineering things, they'll learn case studies, they'll learn finance, valuation, all that stuff. But all of that stuff goes to waste if you can't convince the person who's interviewing you that you are awesome, you are cool, you're exciting, right? Because the point is, it's not about if you can do the job. Everybody can do the job. That's the whole point. These jobs aren't hard to begin with. But the whole goal is, does the person who's interviewing me, do they like me? Do they like my energy, my communication, my ability to convince them, right? Am I a happy person? Do I smile, or am I, do I have ego? All of those things. So behavioral stuff is more important than anything else. So when you do prepare for interviews, put the technical side, the training to the side. That can always come up later. And the best part is technical, it's a binary thing, A plus B equals C. Right? It's not like something too complex. But the behavioral start, do more practice and on that. So, more mock interviews, learn your story really well, learn how to answer questions. And that's kind of what my course teaches. And that's why I focus on that and I don't focus on the technical, because everybody can learn the technical. All right, so those are the most crucial components of getting a job. And hopefully that's helpful. Finally, the last piece I want to talk about are the common mistakes people make early on in your career. So, these are just a couple of ones that came to my mind that I think are important. The first one is when you are young and you're going through undergrad or grad, and it's the early parts of your independent life, because the first time you're kind of living away from parents. This is the first time, unfortunately, what happens is you have to make choices by yourself, right? Up till now, most of your choices were made by family, right? Mostly. But this is the first time where you have to make your own choices. So what I've noticed is a lot of people, what they do is they fall for, herd mentality. The right decision for me is what the right decision is for the group, right? So if you see a bunch of people applying for Google, then Google is also a good opportunity for me, right? Or if a bunch of people are applying for investment banking at Goldman Sachs, then I should also do that. So my first point I want to mention on that is, just because others are doing, that doesn't mean it's right for you, right? So I would take that out and stop looking at what other people are doing and really start thinking about, what do you love doing, right? And that's the first piece I'll say. A lot of times you'll get disappointed because a bunch of people are applying for these really, good jobs. Everybody's applying for the good jobs and only one or two people will get it. You won't get it and you'll feel disheartened. But maybe it wasn't the right job for you. So really pause and reflect on any decisions you make while you're in undergrad. This goes for taking courses. This goes for taking internships, choosing career opportunities, career paths. Don't follow the herd, right? Follow your own personal passion. So on that piece, the second piece, which relates to the first piece, is, young people don't explore enough, right? So what I mean by that is, when you're an undergrad, it's very easy to get pigeonholed and just be like, hey, I'm just gonna, apply for, investment banking and tech companies and consulting, because that's what the cool kids do. Now, that may be right, that may be the right opportunity for some people, but not all people. And the best way for you to figure out what's right for you is to go explore. Now, exploration, what I mean by that is, when you're young, you have a lot of time and ability to take risks, right? Let's say you take an internship in a sector that you don't know anything about. If you don't like it, no worries. It's not going to have a big impact on your career. You can go do another internship, then do another part-time internship while on campus. So there's a lot of ways to try different flavors. And I always tell people, think about yourself as an alien who just, landed on planet Earth, and the first stop you made is the ice cream store. So at the ice cream store, there's all these tubs of ice cream that you've never tried. So the easiest thing for you to do is just take a bite of each and see which flavors you actually like. So in university, one recommendation I'll tell you in terms of exploring is go talk to everybody and anybody who you can find on the alumni directory, right? If someone has been in consulting, talk to them. Banking, talk to them. Startups, tech, industry, right? There's a ton of, I'm sure, local businesses that exist. There's a lot of people. Let's just say there's someone you meet who owns 40 restaurants. Have a conversation with them. What's the harm, right? Go ask them, what do they love about their day? What do they hate about their day? What do they love about their job and the people they work with? All that stuff. This is the time you can explore. And early on, you can do a lot of exploration. So for me, for example, if you rewind and look at my career path, my freshman internship was, I worked as a security guard, and that was the night shift. Day shift, I did a chicken restaurant, right? And not even KFC, right? It was like a boutique chicken restaurant. Then as a sophomore in my second year, I worked at a nuclear power plant, right, as an engineering intern, right? Then the third year, I worked in consulting at Accenture, right? And then in my senior year, I worked at RBC Capital Markets on the trading floor, right? So if you look at all of those jobs, none of them are investment banking, right? None of them are, elite or anything like that, but allowed me to explore different things and find out what do I don't like. Did not like engineering, obviously did not like working at the chicken restaurant, all that stuff. But point is, you can try those things. You can't try those things later on in your life, right? So right now in undergrad, explore as much as you can. And that exploration starts with talking to people who've been, who have figured out their own journey and stuff, and learn from them. Finally, I think the last piece, I'll say this, and I've seen this in a lot of Singaporean students more than any other, students that I've seen globally. Singaporean students generally are very competitive, right? And I think it starts from, just growing up in Singapore culture. Everybody's super competitive from day one. How you get into certain schools is very competitive, and then so on and so forth. I think the problem there is when you compete, when you're extra competitive, you start losing sense of what's happening outside of the arena, right? And if this is your arena, meaning let's just say you're at Goldman Sachs and there's 6 other analysts with you, you start competing heavily with these 6 other analysts without realizing that there's really amazing people outside the world who maybe even, doing more fun things and following their passions and doing something that they're really interested in. And in terms of differentiating yourself, if you think about it, let's say you get a job at Goldman Sachs and you're competing with the 6 people around you. Ultimately, let's say you want to go to Harvard Business School after Goldman Sachs. Harvard Business School is not going to care if you were the #1 Goldman Sachs analyst in your team. That's not going to be something that's going to be appealing to them, because that just means that you just did one thing and you were only good at one thing, and that was, you're competing in a small environment. But if you just take that opportunity and, be the 2nd best analyst at Goldman Sachs or the 3rd best analyst at Goldman Sachs while starting a small business on the side or doing some other additional things on the side, then Harvard Business School will be like, holy shit, this person's even more interesting and exciting. So my view on competition is competing in a healthy way is good, but in an unhealthy way, overly being competitive and losing sight of what actually matters can ultimately hurt you. Anyways, so those are kind of the 3 things that I think early on in your career you guys should be focused on. Don't be too focused on your, competing too locally, right? Being #1 in your class, calculus class on campus, doesn't really matter. Just do your best in it and compete more globally. All right, so those are some of the things that I had in terms of stuff that I wanted to talk about. I have a bunch of questions that you guys have put in early on, so I'll go through them unless someone has a question live that they wanna go for first.
So I had a question, Sherjan.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of things that are really important for us, and one of them was networking, like cold calling. So that's actually how I spent a big part of my summer, which was cold calling and trying to network to set up the junior year internship. And so that's actually something that I found out the current climate is perfect for that, because everyone's so accessible on Zoom.
Yeah.
And I talked to a couple people from a couple companies that I want to apply to, and the first call was great, like the introduction, the getting to know the other person.
Yeah.
But the difficulty that I had was like the subsequent calls, where you want to maintain the relationship.
Yeah.
But you've asked the questions you wanted to ask, and you're kind of at a point where you don't know what else to say in the call. So what do you think? How could you approach that?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and everybody has it. I felt that as well when I was networking. The first interaction is great, and that's probably the only interaction you'll get for a year, to be honest with you, right? So the way I thought about it is, let's just say you meet 100 people in the next, year. You need to tier them, who they are and where they are in their life and who do you want to be, right? So let's just say in those 100 people, there's about 80 people that, great, you met them, you don't really need to network with them ever again. You're on their radar. Those are not people that you want to follow. Then there's another 15 people that are interesting and you may want to work in those industries or you may want to be there, but they're not tier 1. They're not people that you need to actively be, in touch with. And then finally, there's the 5 people that are super, super, those are the ones where you definitely would love to work. You're most passionate about those roles. So I think tiering people in terms of those, who they are in your network is important. And the way I think about it is once you've made first connection, then what you want to do is you want to take that connection and work on it and build it over a period of time. So people that are tier 1, those 5 people, you need to shoot them an email and give them an update without wasting their time on another call every 6 months. So every 6 months, shoot them a note. Hey, Jenny, hope things are well. Just wanted to give you a quick update. This is, here's what I've done in the last 6 months. Hope you're well. If I'm in New York, and if things go well, if I'm in New York, I'll definitely drop by and grab a coffee. That's it. Just a short update, just to remain on their radar. People that are on tier 2, the other 15 people, you put them for on a 1 year to 14, 15 month kind of horizon, right? Every 14, 15 months, you shoot them a note. If you're in the city, grab a coffee. But they have a much, they're twice the time you'll wait for that. And people that are tier 3, they don't need to know, right? Those are just people you've met once. Great, let them be on the side. So that's how I would tier them and kind of strategize, and just getting in front of them. Remember, like for me, my most closest mentor that I've had, have been 2 closest mentors. I've only met them once, right? In the last 10 years, I've only met them once, because just life becomes busy. You're all over the place. You may be living in a different country than they are. And then when and if you are in the same city as them, you'll shoot them a note. Hey, I'm in the city. Are you around? You're not. No worries. I'll try again next year, right? So, and the thing you got to understand from their side also is they're not waiting for you to be like, hey, where's Brandon? That guy, was supposed to email me. It's only been 6 months now, right? They're not gonna be waiting for you. So that's kind of the way I would think about it. And this way also, you don't have to feel pressure to ask, questions and come up with stupid stuff like, hey, what do you think about this new deal that happened in the sector? And it just comes across very unnatural, right? So.
Yeah, I'd say that's the issue I had for maybe the first 1 or 2 calls.
Yeah.
Then I guess it's a good thing I started in March or April, because I slowly picked up on that, and then started to cut the calls shorter.
Good. Yeah. So most of these first time calls, to be honest with you, are 10 to 15 minutes max, right? You give your intro, and then you have a couple of really good questions you want to ask them. Ask them about their life, what they're up to, their journey. What do they love? Ask also the tough questions like, hey, you have an amazing background. Why are you, still in, why do you choose to still be in this industry? Are you exploring other options? What do you not love about the industry? Right? And people love talking about, their experiences. So, and, once it's 10, 12 minutes, end the call and be like, hey, I appreciate your time. If you guys are ever looking for an intern, please consider me. I'm pretty passionate about this. And if you're not looking for someone right now, I'll definitely check back in again with you guys 6 months from now. And then just put it on your calendar. Hey, 6 months, email Jenny again.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sherjan.
So quick question that I had from someone who said, from what can a non-target STEM student do on their CV? So any CV related stuff, like I mentioned, your resume, you got to really soup it up and stuff. And what I'll do is after this call, I'll email you, Brandon. You can circulate the links, and then you guys can upgrade your resume. That should really help you. And I would stop everything and spend the next couple of days just upgrading your resume so that it's top notch. And in that course, you'll also see my my personal resume, so you can take examples from it. Then there was someone who asked for a PhD. They were asking they left a PhD program in social sciences after 4 years. I left a PhD program in the social science after 4 years, and I wonder if this is going to be a black mark against me when applying for positions. So it's not. In the grand scheme of it, it's not. If you think about your career, one of the things I noticed, and this is another thing that people early on in their career make, they think that their steps they're taking today are going to have massive impact later on. It's not the case, right? Right now, it's too early in your career. You can make a lot of mistakes, right? And nobody's going to really know what happened, right? Look at me, I did all those 4 or 5 things, right? Doesn't matter, right? And similarly, think about it this way, yes, my low GPA of 3.0, it should really impact me, but it impacts me in the early parts of my career, not now. Now, if I'm looking for a job, nobody's gonna be like, hey, what was your GPA? And if they're like, hey, we don't hire people with 3.0, I don't wanna work for you. I've already proven myself. So I wouldn't be worried about it. Let's just say you did something, didn't work out, things like that happen. Owning what didn't work out is great. And one of the things I told a student of mine recently, she was asking me about, joining a startup, and I told her, she was like, hey, what if the startup fails, right? This is kind of failure is always going to be part of your life. It's just normal to have it. So I told her, look, startups fail, founders don't, right? Just because your startup failed doesn't mean you failed. It's just something that you'll learn along the way. Yes, that product, that market, things didn't work out, and that's fine. But you as a person grew. You as a person learned. So this person who went through a PhD program, did it 4 years, but then didn't pursue it fully, no worries. It's not like for 4 years they were just sitting on Instagram and just scrolling. They were building something, researching, meeting people, thinking creatively. That's learning, that's growing. And if you think about your career just now, for example, 4 years of undergrad follows after that 40 to 50 years of career, right? So 4 years is not even 10% of your ultimate career. So I wouldn't be too worried about if you guys take a step, an incorrect step, let's just say. Okay, so then another question I had was, so someone asked me something about how do I gain gain skills to make myself a more valuable engineer? So unfortunately, I was never a good engineer in terms of undergrad, and I never pursued engineering, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. But overall, I'll say people who are good at their jobs, are just people that people like, and they work hard, they show up on time, they're great at communication. I had a video on YouTube that I just posted, which was about how smart are investment bankers, because a lot of people think, oh, investment bankers are really smart, but they're not, right? They're just hardworking, they do the job, and the best people who I've met who were the best investment bankers weren't the smartest, but they were the hardest working, they had great communication skills, everybody loved them. They were always down to get the job done, even when shit hit the fan and stuff was tough. So I think the best employees are those that show those skills versus those that have ego and act like they know everything and all that stuff. So as you guys rise in your careers, try to be the person that the MD or the partner is like, hey, I want Jerome on my deal because Jerome always shows up on time. I want Tuan on my deal because Tuan replies to emails within 5 minutes. Like, I want Brandon on my deal because Brandon always shows up and is smiling and makes everybody in the team happy, right? And even if he doesn't know something on the job, he'll put his hand up and be like, hey, but I'm willing to learn. Those are the kind of things that I think make better employees versus the other way around. All right, so those are the questions I think people had. There's other questions that people had that I've already answered in the material, but I'm happy to answer.
I have a question as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going into I'm trying to go into investment banking, and first of all, do you recommend that to go into the route of, because I joined, I kind of learned about investment banking quite late, as most people kind of know it going into college and they start in their freshman year, whereas me, I start to learn technicals and stuff like that during halfway through my sophomore year.
Yeah.
Would you recommend the path of going to grad school and then from there going into analyst positions at big banks?
Yeah.
Would that be an easier path? And also, do kind of the general big banks here in the US, do they have the similar attitude towards international students, or do some of them favor international students more than others?
Yeah. So first question, I think, so you're right. These industries like investment banking, consulting, accounting, a lot of them, they have very structured recruiting processes, right? And the first kind of time you interact with them is when you get that junior internship, right? And you're right, a lot of people who are super gung-ho, who know the industry well, are crafting themselves starting freshman year. And by the time junior year comes around, they have it. So if you missed a junior boat, you don't have a good junior internship or any internship in investment banking, my recommendation is to get any internship that is as close as possible to investment banking. So for what I did when I was at UCLA, I got an internship, not in an investment bank in the summer, but an advisory firm, right? Like a finance firm, which does advisory, which is not even a bank. And it was unpaid. So nobody would know about what it is, but guess what? It's a step closer, right? So if you can get a step closer, great. When you take that, then you apply for full-time job opportunities, and hopefully you get an interview in investment banks, but still chance might be low. But that's the second time you'll get an opportunity to intersect yourself with the investment banking industry. Now, let's just say you don't get that either. Then my recommendation to you would be to actually go get work experience, for a couple of years in sectors that you think investment banks really like. So for example, if you ultimately do want to do investment banking and you want to be on the West Coast, then maybe go join a tech company for a couple of years, right? Go join Amazon or Google or Facebook and learn tech and operational side and all that stuff. If, for example, you want to do investment banking in Australia, right? Then there's a lot of minerals and mining companies there, right? Maybe you join something like that. Point is, you pick a sector and you learn some information there, or you join another industry which is similar to investment banking, but still highly sought after. So for example, you join the corporate development of some, big, medium to large company. You could join, for example, corporate development or finance at Coca-Cola, for example, right? You work there for a couple of years, then you have your second shot, because now it's very hard. It's going to be very hard for you to move from Coca-Cola to Morgan Stanley right now. What you can do is you can go to business school, right? A business school gives you that second chance to get into these industries, because you'll get a summer again and you'll get a full-time recruiting cycle again, right? So again, now this time you're not late, you're ahead of the curve. So as soon as you get your business school offer from, let's just say, NYU or Columbia or whatever, you start emailing every alumni, because now the game has been reset, right? So you're not late to the game now. So it's been reset, you start from 0-0 and you network, and you try to get that summer internship no matter what, right? And then hopefully you get that. If you don't get that, you have one more full time. Now, in the grand scheme of things, let's just say you tried your best in all of those 4 or 5, checkpoints where you could have gotten into the industry, you didn't, no worries. In the grand scheme of things, if you, and I have this philosophy, if you look at the top 100 people in the world who you think are successful, so like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, whatever, like just make a list of 100, I would argue not more than 3 or 4 of them have ever done investment banking, right? So the truth is, if you miss the boat entirely for the industry that you really were passionate about, no worries. There's a lot of other industries and avenues where you can be successful, you can be passionate. So couldn't get into investment banking, no worries. Go apply to some of the fastest growing tech firms, right? Go apply to some of the fastest growing startups, right? That's where you'll be actually more happier and stuff, and maybe that's where you'll actually be more excited of working. So just keep that in mind. Getting into these industries, like I said, a big component of it is luck. Like I said, 50% is luck. And if luck is not in your favor in those things, don't take it to heart. Just move on and focus on something else. And then the second question you asked me, Fawn, was related to which U.S. investment banks favor international or are more favorable to internationals. The truth is, I don't think any company is more favorable or less favorable, right, on the surface. I think every company is open to hiring international students, but there's a lot of underlying factors that make it harder for them to hire international students. And obviously, as you can imagine, the biggest one is visa, right? And with visa situations and, who is in the political power in that situation, in that year at the White House, and how the immigration policies are being set, different things can be, different for each company. But the biggest firms like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, McKinsey's of the world, they're very fair, in my opinion, right? They don't discriminate against if you're from one or the other, right? The reason also is because, remember, these firms have international offices in probably the countries where you come from. So if they start discriminating against Singaporean talent in the US, then Singapore's, businesses will start discriminating against these US firms in their, Singapore geography, right? So it's like a two-way street, right? So I wouldn't be too worried about, what are the things like, I wouldn't be too worried about what are the things that are way out of your control. I don't think that's a good way to look at it. Just focus on things that are in your control. If they lean your way, great. If they don't, not an issue at all, right? Worrying about things that are above your, capabilities and outside of your realm of opportunity and what you can actually actively control, it's time wasted on things that don't matter.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
I also have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked earlier about diversifying and building your own brand.
Yeah.
So after our undergrad years, as a non-business student, would you recommend we do an MBA so we have a introduction into that side of the company or business that we're trying to get into? Mm-hmm. Or would you recommend that we go to grad school for, say, some engineering, we have a deeper background to that field?
Yeah. So look, I'm personally against the MBA degree, to be honest with you, only for a few reasons, because a lot of people do the MBA for the wrong reasons, right? They get an MBA because they're like, oh, I'll have this Harvard brand, or I'll get the MBA because I'll have a bigger network or whatever. MBA makes sense for some people. It doesn't make sense for all people. And I definitely disagree with, it'll make sense for me to learn business, right? Anybody who wants to learn business side of business doesn't go to business school, right? They already know, learning business and parts of it. You'll learn it on your own by just doing things and being in companies. And you could even read blog posts and learn the business side of things, right? So my recommendation on going and doing a second degree is to figure out where does that degree take you after the degree. That's the key thing. going and doing the degree just for the degree itself is not a good reason, right? Like for me, I did UCLA Masters in Financial Engineering, not to learn financial engineering, right? I did it because I was like, I need a network that I can go attach myself to and get a better brand, ability to upgrade my GPA, and get interviews again in my life to get into investment banking. That was the whole reason, right? And that's why I went to UCLA, right? Don't go to Harvard or Stanford or whatever other school, name it, just because they're better brands, right? Now, for example, if you guys feel like, hey, look, with my current brand, I'm not getting the same amount of opportunities, great, go to business school. Or if you're like, hey, I've kind of reached a plateau in my career and I want to transition careers. So I want to go from engineering to business, right? Great, go do a business degree, right? But really figuring that out is important. I would recommend, so I did a video on this on YouTube, which is, why should you go to business school, right? And so if you want to watch that, I'll share the link to it here as well, so you guys can see it. But basically, that'll answer you what are the good reasons for you to go to business school.
All right, thank you.
I'll just share that with you here. And the video is, should I go to business school? Other questions, guys?
I have another question.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned before, but like, so if I were to apply to Singapore, I think a lot of people in Singapore, they come from universities such as NUS, NTU, so they are like top 20 like ranking universities globally.
Yeah.
So I mean, currently I'm in ASU, and globally it's not like ranked really high. So I'm wondering, how do I compete against him, and how do I stand out against those candidates?
Yeah. Look, I think, some of the stuff when you don't go to a top tier university, I think personally, the only way to differentiate is by doing something yourself, right? So for me, I had to, build my own, no worries, Brendan, I'll chat with you soon. So for me, I had to kind of build my own path, started my own coaching business, photography business, those kind of things. Because I didn't rely on the university selling me. Right, I had to rely on my own networking to get people to like me. I had to rely on my own hustle to get people to like me and give me a shot, right? So and I understand that, like Arizona State University is not a top tier university. I get that, right? But remember, there are people from Arizona State University who have done well, right? And who have, done great things. And it'll come down to you, ignoring that piece that, hey, ASU is in a top tier place. That's the first thing you need to get out of your mind. And start proving to people that you can do great things, right? And that those great things will come from you taking the initiative. So if you have, let's just say, I'll give this overall, let's just say you're super passionate about some sector, start writing blog posts on Medium about that sector. Showcase that you have some really unique insights about a sector. And by the time your recruiting comes up, you've published 50 articles on that sector, just by yourself. Nobody can stop you from doing it, right? But well, guess what that does? Because you publish so much text on the internet, by the time you recruit, when someone searches your name, they're going to see, holy shit, look at all the stuff this person's done on their own, right? So doing things like that is how you'll be able to set yourself apart. There's no way other than that you'll be able to set yourself apart, right? So you'll have to differentiate by doing things like that, or by taking opportunities other people don't want to take, right? So if everybody's applying for Goldman Sachs New York, go apply to Goldman Sachs Dubai. Right? If everybody's applying to, something like, at, Grab Taxi Singapore headquarters, but Grab is now expanding into, let's say, the inner towns of Vietnam, go say, hey, I want to take the marketing role in the inner towns of Vietnam. I'll leave that, right? So you kind of take a little bit of a hit because you're like, you know what? All I want is get into the industry. So I'll give you another example. A buddy of mine, who's probably one of the best VPs I've ever met, or investment bankers I've ever met. This person has never even gone to university, any university, right? And he was the best investment banker I've ever seen. Now, his story is he joined the back office of Morgan Stanley. So what back office means is, when you join these industries, you have front office, which is people that interact with the client, right? And then you have all the operational staff that's in the back, right? So the staff that does research, the staff that does, whatever back office things, right? Printing documents, all that stuff. So obviously, if you look at an employee base of 1,000, let's just say, 10 of them will be front office, 990 will be back office, right? Not everybody's meeting clients. So this guy was back office in India, right? Working at Morgan Stanley, but India office, no client interaction, sitting in some cubicle in Chennai or something, but he was the best. He was the best in that office. So Morgan Stanley has this thing where they're like, hey, if you're really good in the firm, we'll give you a chance to be in a different group or sector for 3 months as an internship. So this guy was selected. He chose investment banking in Hong Kong, and then he was moved there. And when he got there, this guy worked twice as hard as anybody else, was much better than anybody else, right? Yes, wasn't as client facing, but guess what? Just was a better person and better worker than anybody else. And he was the best associate in the team, in my opinion. He was a better vice president than anybody else, including me. And I think people like that exist. So you make the most what you can given the options you have. And the only way he could get in was by going through the back office route, right? So I think that's the other way that I would recommend. And then the other part is, dude, like, look, there's a lot of people from Arizona State University who've done well, right? And that always has to be in your mind, that you need to be like, look, if they can do something great, and maybe not in investment banking, but in other sectors, you push yourself to be the first one in that sector. And for me, I always thought about it this way. I know, like, University of Toronto is a good university, but it's not at the same level as the top 10 universities in the US, right? But I always thought, I was like, okay, how many employees? Let's see, Goldman Sachs employees. So I'll just do a quick search. So Goldman Sachs has 40,000 employees globally, right? My view was, there's one person at Goldman Sachs who I'm better than, right? As long as I'm better than one person and I can take that person's job, I'm gonna keep focused on that. So that was my goal. Now, obviously, I didn't end up getting a job at Goldman Sachs. I ended up getting a job at Morgan Stanley. Great, right? But having that mindset, it's only one person I need to replace. It's not a big deal, one person, right? So if you network and keep on going, and the last piece on that is, you got to be long-term greedy on this, right? People like us who have non-target backgrounds are not going to get it today. Yeah, if you want to get this job today, you're not going to get it. It's just harder because there's enough people in the lineup. But if you have a mindset that I want to get this 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and slowly build on it, then you'll get there, hopefully. And if not, there's something close enough to it, which is going to be exciting for you.
Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions, guys, before we end this? Before I can...
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I guess just running through all the notes that I've written.
Yeah.
It's definitely a more viable path, especially as a non-target, to go through the networking route. I was really curious. So if we were to apply like right out the door, so like maybe we send an email to like the HR department for internships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those guys have a huge pool of applicants.
Yeah.
I was really curious, like what's like how should we set our expectations if we're gonna try and squeeze through that route? Because I've looked into quite a number of LinkedIn profiles, like randomly, and the people, I guess, who make it look really easy getting into these internships are, guys from Ivy Leagues and stuff.
Yeah.
They have immaculate profiles and like almost a resume that you could dream of. So I mean, it's kind of discouraging when you look at that and you're like, well, how am I even gonna start?
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Look, I totally hear you, and I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to say it is not easy, right? The people that you see who do break in, and I'm not one of them, right? I'm not one of those who had like a perfect pedigree background and those resumes. Like, I'll give you an example: Morgan Stanley Tech in Menlo Park. If you look at the kids who get the jobs in that specific group, it's only from 4 schools mostly: Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, and Wharton, right? All of them are like the best of the best of the best. And it was like my dream to get there, but I was like, I knew I was not going to get it, because look at their LinkedIn profiles. You're like, there's no way. Look at this stuff. So yes, the odds are stacked against you for sure, right? And that's the truth. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. Now, it is not, it's definitely not impossible. Like I said, it's definitely possible, but the chances are super low. All you can do is, be focused on getting a little bit, closer at a time. You're not going to be able to make that jump all throughout, right? So if you look at, like I said, let's just rewind and look at my career journey just to the investment banking world. I took an unpaid internship at a no-name company, right? Then I got an offer at a small Canadian bank. Then I converted that offer to a middle market investment bank in LA. Then I lateraled to the job that, you know, all these other kids from Harvard and Stanford were getting, right? Now, all of those things required a ton of luck and being in the right places, networking, growing, learning, and time. A lot of time was spent, right? I was one of the older analysts because I was 2 or 3 years older than the other people, right? I was more poor by then because I'd spent so much time not making money and going and taking a second degree and all that stuff. So it's definitely, you know, odds are against you, but that shouldn't dishearten you from trying, right? You should at least, you know, slowly, you know, build towards it. Now, stepping back a little bit to the first thing you mentioned, if you're only aiming to apply, you know, through reaching out to recruiters or applying online, your chances of getting the job are even lower, right? Even lower, right? And it's just not going to work. So the reason for that is, you know, it's just numbers game. Unfortunately, you know, resumes from all these top universities get pocketed into, you know, the right person from that university. So someone from Harvard at Goldman Sachs reviews all the Harvard resumes, right? So with kids who are not going to the top schools, they get bucketed into the non-target. And there's some non-target guy from some school who's going to review everybody from Arizona State to Ohio State to UCLA to whatever, right? And, you know, what are the chances he or she is going to put your resume from the, you know, pile to the accept pile for an interview screening? Very low. So it's just numbers game is low. And the goal shouldn't be getting the job. The goal is like, you got to just try and make sure you're, you know, pushing your candidacy a little bit further and networking so that, you know, you can reduce some of those bottlenecks. So what I mean by that is if, let's just say somehow you find a Singaporean guy in the New York office of Goldman Sachs and he or she likes you, right? Great. They may, you know, overlook the fact that you're at Arizona State University, right? They'll be like, you know what? I understand this person's pain and why. And some people would be willing to take a chance on you, right? So those are the avenues you're trying to carve yourself into. And if you've done your stuff to make your resume look great, right, it's going to give you that edge. So Arizona State University, you can't change. That's already on your resume. But can you start a business that crushes it? Yes. Can you start something else on the side that, you know, does well? Yes. And if that Singaporean guy who would have not looked at the Arizona State University resume before, because it's like, oh, why would I review this because I went to Harvard? But he sees that resume, sees, oh my God, this person has done something really interesting, has the capability, whatever. Let's have a chat. Let's see what he's about, you know, what she's about. That's how I would think about it, and not be disheartened. And finally, look, like I said, the goal shouldn't be like, if I don't get this, I'm a failure, right? If I didn't get Morgan Stanley, I would have been fine at Houlihan. If I didn't get Houlihan, I'd be fine at Bank of Montreal, okay? If I didn't get Bank of Montreal, I would have been fine in other things, right? And if you look at my resume, you'll be surprised, like my current resume, like Morgan Stanley just takes 2 lines. Like the original, my most job that I tried hardest to get, the one where all the Harvard, Stanford kids go, it's only 2 lines on my resume. Most of my resume now is this stuff, coaching stuff, because that's my passion. And my previous startup, the software company that failed, right? You over time become your own brand. And right now you're in a brand chasing mode because you're under 30, and from 20 to 30 years old, you're going to be chasing brands and all that stuff. After 30, you're going to become your own brand, and hopefully companies will chase you. So that would be my, advice and guidance on that. Any other questions, guys? Look, we'll post this on YouTube so you guys can watch it again and share with your friends and stuff. I'll reach out to Brandon after this. I'll send him a few links that you guys can use. I have a course which is related to investment banking and breaking into consulting and these kind of industries that you guys should take. I'll provide Brandon with a discount as well so you guys can get a discount. I think you'll learn the most, and given my story and how I've come from a non-target background like yourself and been able to break in, I think it's the best investment you guys can make. You'll learn a lot from it. Then I'll put in a few other links where you can learn a bit more stuff and just improve yourself. The good thing is, guys, you have time on your side, right? All of you have a ton of time on your side. There's no rush. There's no rush to get a job in terms of investment banking tomorrow or any other industry. Time is good. Gives you time to navigate the waters, and the best time to be in school is when there's a pandemic going on and the economy is shit, right? So it's the best time to take cover from it. So this is the best time for you to network, like Brandon mentioned as well, like cold email, cold calls, improve your resume, build something on the side, use that time, to build yourself. So by the time you come out of school, let's say 2 years from now, the economy is doing better, there's a pandemic is behind us, there's a vaccine and all that stuff, and companies are hiring again. And that's going to be, how I would think about it. All right.
All right. Thank you, Sherjan. If you wouldn't mind letting me share my screen
Yeah,
just
go for it.
go through some slides and finish up the event. All right. Can everybody see it? All right. Once again, thank you, Sherjan, for your time and for all the amazing information you gave to us. Your a couple of our future events and plans for the fall. Intro to SG, a quick introduction to Singaporean culture for people who aren't from Singapore and who just want to learn more in case they're interested in going on the transfer program there or being an exchange student. West Coast SSA engagement, a quick meeting and a social night. SSAs from other universities such as the University of Arizona, Stanford, and Berkeley. And of course, various other social nights that we will have later on. And if you're interested in any of these future events, feel free to check out our Instagram, Facebook, and if you want to keep in touch, sign up or get our emails and newsletters, please fill out this form. I'll put the link in the chat in case you want to join. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming to this event, and thank you again, Sherjan.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Enjoy, have fun, and then and stay in touch. Okay. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sherjan.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.